Hello there, Donny Carr here with another in the studio. Today, the topic of discussion is tom drums. I like to use tom drums a lot. I use them in nearly every project or something very similar. I really like how it plays off the kick. I think it adds to the groove and just makes the track more danceable. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to take you through my kind of an example of how I would program and process a tom drum from start to finish. So I have a basic little beat here. I mean, it's just a kick and a few hi-hats, just so we have something to work with. And then we're going to program a tom in here, and I'll take you through how I would maybe process it. We'll take a look at some of the MIDI adjustments I'm going to make it a little bit more interesting. So let's have a listen to this. See, super simple. All right, so I have a tom already picked out here. It's just kind of like an 808 style tom, like that. And let's just put down a basic little pattern here. So here's what I'm kind of thinking. Something like that, really basic. But it's kind of bouncing off the kick nicely, I think. But that's a little bit too low, I think. We can maybe pitch this up a little bit. So let's try that. Yeah, that's better. We'll go with that for now. Okay, so let's process this little bad boy, and then we'll go back into the piano roll and make some adjustments with the MIDI after we process it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, let's actually just kill those hi-hats for a second and kill the kick drum. The first thing I'm going to do is EQ this. So I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger so you can more easily see what's happening. All right, so there's some frequencies in here, particularly in kind of the mid-range. I usually like to see if I can scoop out. So I'm just going to make a cut here. I'm going to go pretty aggressive to start, and we'll probably dial that back. But what I'm going to do is just start down here and just sweep up until kind of the unpleasant, kind of muddy, honky frequencies in this area here around 600, 500, 400 area, until the tom drum just kind of sounds nicer and it almost kind of sounds a little bit deeper. So let's just play this. Yeah. In like the 500 hertz area on this one. About there. Without it. Yeah. That's a little bit harsh. It's a little bit aggressive. So I'm going to just dial that back. So maybe it's roughly around 6. And we'll kind of adjust the Q here, or the bandwidth. Out there. We'll go with that for now. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this main fundamental frequency here just a little bump. Just a little bump. kind of narrow that bandwidth a little bit. Just a little bump, maybe a dB. And then what I'm going to do is maybe bring out some of the bite, that transient, that top end, you know, kind of click. About there, I think, is nice. And we're just going to dial that back. I just want a small, I mean, you can boost this to taste, really. It all depends on what you're doing and what kind of sound you're going for. I just want just a little bump there, and I'm going to kind of, yeah, maybe like a dB or a half dB or something. Let's go with about a dB on that too. And then I'm just going to do a simple low cut on this as well. Just because there's some kind of unneeded, if I was doing this for real, I would think that there's some unneeded kind of harmonics below this main fundamental hit here. So I'm just going to bring that up to maybe around 80 Hertz. And then we can do the same for the top end. Oops. Let's give it a little roll off. And yeah. Okay, so let's play that with the, you know, the kick and the hi-hats here. So that's without the EQ, and with. Yeah. Yeah, dipping this kind of honky little area out right here in the 500 Hertz range really just is making that just much more pleasant. So got that EQ'd nice. Now what I'm going to do is maybe look to add possibly some saturation or some distortion. You can kind of, you know, there's a lot of options here, but I'm just going to use this Omega Transformer plugin. I really like this for some saturation. It really brings sounds to life. It really sounds good on all kinds of sounds and elements, but particularly on kind of percussion sounds. So I'm going to add some saturation here with this plugin. Definitely getting a little bit of a volume boost. So I'm just going to adjust for that a little bit. Let me pull it down 2 dB. I like what that's doing. That's kind of bringing it to life. That in a nice way. And I mean, the reason I did the EQ first is I wanted to take away the frequencies that I don't want in there. I don't see any point in saturating frequencies that I don't want in there in the first place. So that's why I added the EQ to it first, and then we're going to saturate it, add some harmonics, kind of bring it to life. And then what I'm going to do is, now this is just kind of my personal preference. A lot of times I like to add a compressor to bring out the attack a little bit more. And I really like using the DBX 160 from UAD for this, but you could use, you know, a transient designer or another compressor of your choice. All right, so I am going to maybe just pull back on the compression amount here to about 3, and I'm just looking for a little flick. I'm not looking to compress this a lot. I'm just looking to just bring out that attack. That's way too much. Yeah, this compressor just brings out the attack of percussive sounds in a really nice way, and it's tightening the tom up. So I like that. And like I said, alternatively, you could maybe just try a transient designer or another compressor perhaps. There's various clones and emulations of the DBX 160. I think Native Instruments makes one. I'm sure there's others out there. But that compressor is kind of known for that, you know, really bringing out the attack of sounds. And then the last thing I'm going to do as far as processing goes is just add a little touch of sidechain. So I'm just going to grab this kickstart plug. Yeah, just again tightening it up a little bit more with that side chain. I mean, I could adjust the envelope too if I wanted to tighten it up, but sometimes I like to just maybe use a little bit of side chain instead. It really just depends. But in this case, I think the side chain sounds nice, but you could just adjust the envelope too if you wanted to. Okay, so one thing to note before we get any further here is what you might want to do. I don't think it's necessary in this case, but a lot of times after, you know, if I use distortion or saturation on a sound, sometimes I'll add an EQ afterwards, just to make sure that I'm cleaning up any harmonics that I might have added with the distortion or saturation. So you could possibly, you know, add another EQ after the saturation in the chain just to clean things up, because, you know, that's the whole point of distortion and saturation, is adding or it's not the only point, but that's one of the things you get with distortion and saturation is added harmonics. So you might want to think about adding an EQ afterwards. Okay, let's head into the piano roll. There's a few things I want to do in here. And so I made this 2 bars for a reason, so I can do a little kind of back and forth little call and response. I mean, this is like a micro call and response, but if we just make subtle changes between each of these two, you know, each of these little hits here, then we can kind of create like a little mini back and forth, a little mini call and response between these 2 patterns, and I do that a lot. I just think it just makes the groove more interesting. So what I'm going to do is maybe just pull this velocity down slightly. This one I'm going to bring up a little bit. So we kind of have cool. Let's also just nudge these 16th notes over a little bit. I don't want those right on the grid. I think it'll sound better swung slightly. So I'm just going to highlight those, hold shift, make sure to take the snap to none or switch it to none. And then we're going to just hold shift, press over. It's going to nudge it over one click. So that's how it sounded before. You notice when I move it over, it all of a sudden seems like it has a little bit more space to play. And so just timing is so important. So listen for that again. As I nudge it over, you can hear it just kind of have a little bit more space to do its thing. And I only have very, very few elements in this little example, loop here, but that'll make even more of a difference when you have, a full track going. Okay, so just nudge those 16th notes off the grid slightly, give them a little bit of swing, and then I'm going to head into the pan, the note pan, and I don't know why those are nudged down, but I'm just going to move this one over to the left, and then cool. And this one I'm just going to make just be slightly different, so I'll go 12 left on that one, and I'll go 19 right. Just give those a little bit of movement with some panning adjustments on each of the individual hits. And then we're going to head into the note fine pitch. And I'm just going to nudge this one down here in the second, little phrase, I guess, down 10 cents. See, even these teeny little adjustments, a little pitch nudge, little subtle differences in the velocities, it kind of gives it like a little micro kind of call and response type of thing going on. And that really goes a long way when you're doing that to a lot of the elements in your groove. Okay, so kind of made some adjustments with the MIDI, made some improvements there. So there's one more thing I want to do, and that is adding a little like reverb accent to the tom, maybe at the end of 8 bars, which is something I do all the time. And it's a great way to, again, make your groove more interesting by maybe giving certain hits, maybe a delay accent or a reverb accent, on one specific hit. So what I'm going to do is on one of these empty auxiliary tracks I have set up, we'll just use this one here. I'm just going to grab a reverb plugin, and I'm going to use the little, not that one, the little plate from Sound Toys, which has a nice kind of rich plate reverb sound. And I'll just leave it on, around 2 seconds is fine, I think. Sure. And let's give this a little bit of a low cut. And then we'll keep the mix at 100% because we're on a send. So that's what we want. I'm going to make sure to take the hats out of this. We're going to call this plate verb. like a type. Okay. And then we're going to automate the send amount to this reverb on one hit only. So I'm going to create an automation clip to that plate reverb from the tom. And I'm just going to drop that right underneath the tom. Okay. And we'll zoom in a little bit. Okay, and I'm just going to do the very last hit of this 8-bar loop here. So let's see what we got. Might even go a little bit longer on the reverb. I think you get the point. I mean, you could maybe add a little extra. You could do delay on top of that reverb too. There's not very many elements here, so it sounds, you know, it really kind of jumps out at you. But in the context of a track, you know, little accents like that really go a long way into making your grooves more interesting. Yeah. So that's an example of how I would, you know, program and process a tom drum. So hopefully you found that useful. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.